All right, so my favorite, scaling our fiction. This is, we're all involved in story, but well, I mean, Dave
this is
involved
your home,
in the Almanac,
though.
but this is my home. Like, this is, I spend half or more of my day immersed in story, and I'm just, and it really, I mean, I know it matters to all of us, but it really matters to me, I think maybe in a slightly different way.
Well, no, it does. It does. Like we very recently had a big business discussion where we were talking about this opportunity and like, should we dive into it or not? Right. And you're like, oh, but this is the fiction. Like, you just wanted to sink the teeth into fiction. And like, I love that. I love how pure you are and the stories that you want to tell. I think that the company will always need that. Like, that is our soul. So, that it is so important to you, I think, is an asset.
Well, so let's blow it up.
Yeah.
Let's blow it up. So this is like the second big goal. This is the other one that took up a lot of space in the meeting, and
deservedly so. I mean, it's our baby. Fiction is our baby.
Absolutely. And fiction is a large part of the company's income. I mean, I think that that's actually really important because it can be a priority, and it's like, okay, well, that's a thing that we do, but no, like it drives a
thing that we do. Yeah.
So how do we want to begin this?
Well, I think what 2016 was important for is making us know where we were weak, right? Like we were, okay, everyone knows what we're strong at, and that's creating content. Mm-hmm. Like, we pretty much rule at that. Like, we create good books at a good clip, and they have good covers, and then that's it. Like, we're not launch ninjas at all. There are people who are so much better at that. As far as staying sticky on Amazon, we're pretty shit at that too. And we found out a lot of stuff like, oh, well, maybe this is responsible for our conversion issues. Like, we unearthed a few things that we were doing very poorly, a few messaging things, a few autoresponder things. I think our quality of work is great. I think we work really well together. I think we get better by the book. Mm-hmm. I think Dave and I get better by the book. I think that we're taking our time with the new authors that we bring in and doing that well. But I think that the big thing that we learned, like, if 2017 is all about preparing for 2018, right? So we have the franchises, the the characters, the worlds, the pen names, all of that stuff in place to really capitalize on 2018. Well, 2016 was preparing us for 2017. So what do we need in 2017? We need a developmental editor. We need somebody who helps us to make our stories better on the front end and the back end, right? So we hired Clark, and Clark came aboard, and now he's giving us, we'll talk about story jackets when we talk about sustainable staffing, but that's the thing, right? Like, we have somebody who can look at our outlines before we get in the writing and say, okay, well, what about this and this and this? And I think that's going to help us like stay on track and create better stories in a shorter period of time. And Tammy is doing that with some of the romance stuff that we're going to be doing. And that's all very exciting. But we also hired Tammy as just a fiction hacker. Like, she's just going through and helping make decisions.
Like promotion hacker, fiction promotion hacker specifically. I just had a meeting with her yesterday, and she's like,
you should talk about this. Yeah,
this is what I want to do. And she's delving in. She works with Chris Fox, who is just an excellent guy in terms of like the nitty gritty data aspects.
Yeah, he's the best ninja I know.
Oh, for sure. And so she's absorbed a lot of that, and she just really has it on her mind. We did a promotion, and she was like, okay, we should change it back to full price on this day, and here's the reason. And it had to do with, when something hit its peak, and what she thought of the cover would be magnetic and all this stuff. And it was very well thought out.
Yeah, her reasoning for stuff is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And then it'll be in these also bots. One of the things that we learned a lot, and she nudged us. We knew this. We knew to check it out. But Tammy really nudged us and said, you guys got to pay attention to this, is marketing the right books to the right people.
Yeah.
So that specifically on Amazon, it's the algorithms have something to grab onto rather than just being confused. And those sorts of things, Tammy she's really good at, and she's really up on, and she's just taken so much ownership of it. And she's like, okay, so I want to do this for Collective Inkwell, and I want to do this for Almond Sands.
Yeah, and she's just on it too. So like what she did with Available Darkness recently, she went in and said, okay, here's a trilogy. It's an asset. You're not leveraging it at all. Like you launched and dumped it and forgot about it. Like, you tend to do a sterling and stone. So how do we leverage this whole thing? Well, they're called Available Darkness Book 1, Book 2, Book 3. Maybe we should change that. And she came up with great names and redid the covers and is, coming up with a whole little relaunching plan. And that kind of stuff isn't just important for us, it's important to anybody who's listening to us, because if you're listening to us, you probably believe in the right publish repeat model. You probably are putting out new content. You have old books, and if you can redress them and relaunch them and leverage those old assets, that's wonderful, because it can help you elevate everything.
Yeah, I would almost say that it's not just write, publish, repeat. It's write, publish, repeat, and then, well, and honestly, iterate and optimize. But yes, revisit is one of the things. We just submitted the Beam for a BookBub promo. You don't even know that we did this morning.
No, I didn't.
And but that's just submitting for a promo. But you got to remember that the Available Darkness is actually another great example. Like, yes, to the people who've been with CI forever, Available Darkness is this series that, yes, it did just complete, but it's also the first one you wrote.
Yeah.
And so it's old news to them. But you got to realize
it's not old news to anyone on BookBub.
Anybody who's ever seen it.
Right.
And so we can fall into the traps of being like, well, that's old. The Beam, we're not done with it. But those 3 seasons, like, we've done those, so let's promote what's fresh. And that's always a mistake.
Promote what is going to leverage.
And tweak. Like, remember that nothing's set in stone. You can change the titles of the Available Darkness books. You can bundle things. You can, one of the things that Julie Huss has done, I remember, is she had an initial trilogy that she had, and then she made an omnibus and got rid of the singles. Yeah. And like sent all her people and said, hey, if you love these, review this. And so it's got this nice high review average, and it's an easy entry point. It doesn't, right. So that's the thing, is always saying, you have assets. How can you make them better?
Right. Well, and we have a lot, because we have all of the stuff that we're producing, and the stuff that we're producing or have produced or in the middle of producing for The Apprentice. It's good stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, it's very commercial and while sticking true to us. And I think that's one thing that we got really good at in 2016 too, mm-hmm. was just recognizing not just who we need to market our fiction to, but how we need to write it, how it needs to be created, how we need to think about it differently from, inception all the way to publication. And that's been really great. But having somebody on staff who's just like asking us those questions and challenging mm-hmm. us is great. So we made this point a few times about how, like, I've been really grateful for The Apprentice because it's kept us on track, right? Like, we had to follow our own rules. So the series that we're writing right now for launch later this year is very much a product of forcing us into, following our own rules. And Tammy's like that. Having Tammy on board, she's asking us, well, why are you doing this? What about mm-hmm. this? What about this? And it just keeps us more accountable, because we're really good at creating the content, but now we have the team to help us really. And
submitting them to the right people, making sure the right people see it. We actually, I don't know if this is too granular, but I'll mention it briefly, is we're relaunching a property that was originally, when we took over the Lexi Maxwell name, we did a lot of stuff wrong. But we also wrote a book called La Fleur de Blanc, and we wrote it and we put it under Lexi's name, and we marketed it. And number one, it was really, really wrong for that existing audience. And number two, if we try to tell anybody about that, like, it's not aligned with anything. It's not aligned with the old Lexi audience. It's certainly not aligned with ours. And so we recently created a segment where we split off and about 300 people off of a list of 22,000, I don't remember, who are interested in women's fiction. And we're just going to tell them. Like, we're just going to tell them. And doing those intelligent things.
That's smarter than telling the whole list, which we didn't understand until recently. And that's a really good thing. And just knowing, we have this reservoir of assets, and we have these new things coming out. And how do we leverage everything? We've got all these LOL titles, and we've split that up into 2 different pen names, because not everything was the same, and we were treating mm-hmm. it as the same. We've got our middle grade titles with Guy Incognito, and those can be, relaunched. And we've got a couple of cool strategies to try to penetrate that market. But having someone like Tammy who can really help us think all of this out, I mean, think how many old Lexi Maxwell words we have, right? And having someone like Tammy on staff to help us leverage that content is just, it's awesome. We will scale our fiction in pretty much every way this year.
Yeah, so the last thing that I would say on this, unless you have more, is in terms of, like, we're trying to leverage and we're trying to really blow up our fiction, is keeping in mind that as much as we look toward how do we make commercial stuff even in our own way, is the one for us, one for them.
Yeah.
And it's much more like one for us 5 for them.
Yeah.
You know, like we are leaning on the side of more commercial properties.
But we are making time to do the projects that are important to us.
Right.
And not
like Devil May Care, which has probably sold 16 copies since it launched.
Right. Right. But we still love it, and it's worth
And I
doing
want to
that.
write another one.
Yeah,
you know?
and did you see that? Like, there's a Facebook thread this morning about, you know, I haven't read a Sterling and Stone book yet. Which one should I read? And a lot of people raised their hand and said Devil, like Devil,
Right.
and that's awesome. Like that's worth it. But really paying attention to our fiction is super important. And there's one other thing I would add, and that's, you know, it gets its own goal when we talk about Story Shop. But Story Shop is going to become a much bigger part in the way we scale our fiction, because we'll be building worlds differently. And there's a whole big, I don't want to talk about what the exact world is right now. I want to keep that under wraps for a little bit. But we are building out a really big world and creating books and stories in that world this year for next year, and trying to get better about unifying all of our world building and books under.
And we'll have a lot more to say about that in a few months.
Yeah, right. That's a little bit nebulous, but that's really exciting, and that's a big piece of how we're going to scale fiction. You know, in preparation in 2017, execution in one area in 2017, and a lot of prep for like big things that we'll do next year. But yeah, scaling fiction is huge for us.
All right, so let's move on then, and we'll cover another goal next time.